So every once in a while, well, okay, like let's just be frank, it's happening a little bit more than once in a while right now, but every so often you see an article that just rises to a certain level of insanity where you're like, is this real life? Like, am I being punked? What is going on right now? And that is exactly how I felt when I came across this article last week from Salon.com. Yale psychiatrist Brandy Lee. Lockdown protesters resemble child soldiers and urban gangs. Dr. Brandy Lee says Trump is practicing total authority and putting his armed troops in the streets. Okay. You can already see where this is going, right? And listen, like this stuff like this, like honestly, people like this, first off, my PhD is in psychology. It is not in psychiatry. What she has is actually much harder to get than what I got, right? This is why this pisses me off. It's like people like her make people like me, who are rational people, who use logic, who are basically interested in like the human experience and exploring the human experience. People like this woman who is literally comparing protesters to child soldiers. They make people like me look insane. And so, you know what? I have absolutely no issue with making fun of this woman on the internet for this insanity, because she brings down an entire field of people who are not as crazy with Trump derangement syndrome as she is. Because of course, this would never, ever, ever be said about protesters on the left. Would never be said. How about Brandy? I'll be respectful. Dr. Lee, why don't you write an article about the Antifa people who protested Scott Presler's trash cleanup in San Francisco? Why don't you write an article about them and do an interview about them, about how insane they are? No, of course, that's never going to happen because Yale. Okay, so here's what we're going to do. I haven't read this article completely. What I did was I kind of scanned it. I scanned it just to get a sense of the actual insanity, but this is one of those articles where I really think that we would all have a little bit more fun with it if you have my genuine, authentic, first take reactions to the crazy that is inevitably in this article. So that's what we're going to do. I'm going to read it. I'm going to give you my sense and reaction to the nonsense that this woman is spewing, and we're going to go from there. But before we get into that, listen, folks, there are a lot of ways you can support this channel and support my work. One of those ways is by donating through Subscribestar. It's a monthly contribution to help me be able to financially justify making more content when I could be doing organizational training and all that sort of thing, frankly, because I need to be able to justify it somehow. And you really help me out when you make a Subscribestar donation. Now, one of the perks of being part of Subscribestar is that you get a shout out in one of my videos. It is included in every single level. There are actually going to be some more really cool perks coming down the pike too. I actually have a meeting about one of them later today. So you're going to want to jump in on this. I promise you it's going to be worth it. But today I have a new subscriber to give a shout out to. Denise, thank you. I really appreciate your support. It really helps me out. Now, if you want to donate through Subscribestar, there is a link in the subscription below. And hey man, I know times are tight. I want to say, like, if you are struggling right now financially, don't give me money. For real, don't do it. We'll catch up later. But what you can do is like, share, subscribe, all that good stuff. All right, let's get into this insane article. A Yale psychiatrist has warned that pro-Trump lockdown protesters who exhibit similar psychology as child soldiers could quickly turn into armed troops in the streets if the president loses his election bid. Yes, because it's the people on the right that we have to be fearful of violence in the street, not the Antifa crazies, right? Listen, like, one of the things that really changed my mind on the right in general was watching some of Tim Pool's older footage when he was just like going to these protests and walking around and like filming what he saw, because that was unedited footage, right? It's not like Tim Pool was presenting an agenda there, but I sat and I watched a lot of that stuff for hours. I won't even admit how many hours I spent watching this stuff because I was fascinated by the difference in how the right was acting versus how the left was acting. Spoiler alert for those of you who do not have hours to dedicate to this. The right are peaceful people that are hanging around and just like chilling, and they're waving flags and whatever. The left are acting like nut jobs and throwing firecrackers into the crowd indiscriminately. It is not the people on the right that we have to worry about. It is the people on the left. But let's listen to Dr. Lee's rationalization about how Trump protesters are child soldiers. Dr. Brandy Lee, a forensic psychiatrist at the Yale School of Medicine, said the armed protests were a national evolution of the loyalty President Trump demands from his supporters. Many of these protests have evidently been organized by deep pocket groups allied with the president. Listen, I actually have been interacting with the protest groups in New Hampshire, and I follow all their stuff. These are not well-financed people, and I'm sorry, I don't mean any disrespect to the people like hosting the protests in New Hampshire. I think I'm actually going to try to go to the one that they're going to have this coming weekend. But, you know, these are obviously not well-financed people. These are just average people who want to make sure their voices are heard, and they want to go back to work, and they want to be able to feed their families, and they're concerned about the impact this is having on people. And rightfully so. I mean, God, like, why does this always have to be some sort of deep conspiracy about these paid protesters? It just makes no sense. Lee, the author of the textbook Violence, so she doesn't have any vested interest in this at all, has been sounding the alarm about the dangers posed by the president for years. She edited The Dangerous Case of Donald Trump after his election with a group of fellow mental health professionals. The book's authors recently started a series of chats entitled, Is America in an Abusive Relationship with Its President? Oh my God, these people. Listen, I want to say this. I did a live chat last week with Dr. Howard Asher. We're going to be doing a whole bunch of them. And basically what Howard and I are trying to do is put more definition around the term Trump derangement syndrome, because he and I both believe it is a very real thing. Howard is a psychotherapist. I'm an organizational psychologist. So Howard is much more well-versed in counseling. I'm not a clinician. He's a clinician. So we're trying to put more definition around it. And in our live chat last week, which if you're interested in the topic of Trump derangement syndrome is on the channel, we put out a call for other mental health professionals to come and join us and talk about this subject. Folks, my email has been getting some responses. So, and I tell you this, and it's not just like onesies or twosies. I've had quite a few people actually reach out to me. And the reason I say this is because anytime they're presenting a case like this about a group of concerned mental health care professionals, it makes it seem as though all mental health professionals are concerned about Trump as a dangerous thing. That's not true. It's flat just not true. Now, there are mental health concerns I have around Trump. There really are. But is he dangerous? Is he grooming a gang of child soldiers? No, he's not. Come on, like, relax, calm down. And this is often the difference between people who are practicing in real life and academics. So an organizational psychologist like me, like, I practice in real life. A clinician like Howard, he practices in real life. People who work at Yale rarely practice in real life. What they do is they teach classes and they do research and they theorize and they get each other all spun up in the faculty dining room about all these things, but they do not practice in real life. They do not talk to real people. It is a fundamental difference, clinician or not. Lee has also served as a project group leader for the World Health Organization Violence Prevention Alliance. She told Salon that Trump's recent call to liberate Democratic-led states was a dog whistle to his core supporters. Subconsciously, it is a loyalty test for people, Lee says. In Africa, where I did some ethnographic work, child soldiers would be recruited and made to kill a family member to demonstrate their allegiance to the government and not to the family. Okay, hang on. I've got a thought is brewing. Similarly, in urban gangs in America, one may be challenged to kill a police officer to prove one's willingness to uphold gang rules over societal rules. Brandy, you have obviously spent zero time getting to know Trump supporters. And because Trump supporters are the very last people in the world that are going to kill a police officer. Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me with this? She's actually suggesting that there's going to be an initiation by these Trump street gangs to kill a police officer Oh my God. This is even better than I thought it was. Wow. When Donald Trump suggests that the violence be taken as a hoax, that people gather in churches, or that people protest for their own sacrifice, he is actually testing people's loyalty to the laws of his mind over the laws of nature, or even... Wait, we're going to read the sentence again. There's so much to unpack here. When Donald Trump suggests that the virus be taken as a hoax, which he never suggested, Brandy, he never said that people gather in churches, or that people protest for their own sacrifice. I don't even know what that means. He is actually testing people's loyalty to the laws of his mind over the laws of nature, or even the impulse for survival. The more he abuses them, the greater their devotion grows, since the psychological cost of admitting their mistake is even higher. Irony. We're going to talk about that in a sec. And so it becomes easier to dig a well of unreality to see the obvious truth. I want to go to this line right here. Since the psychological cost of admitting their mistake is even higher. Brandy. And I'm not even using the doctor title anymore because frankly, she's lost that respect already, like 3 paragraphs into this article. Brandy, darling, do you know what cognitive dissonance is? Girl, you got it. You got it. You obviously have taken zero time to interact with Trump supporters or conservatives or these people that are protesting to try to protect their fundamental liberties. You have obviously spent zero time interacting with them or even having a casual conversation. Listen, dude, you gotta fight your own confirmation bias here, Brandy. Only you can do that. No one can do that for you. The reality is that these people care about liberty. They care about freedom. That's why they're protesting. They care about having a paycheck. They care about being able to feed their family. That is why they're protesting. And it's very easy for you on your ivory tower, where I'm sure you are collecting an absurd salary for saying absurd things that have no grounding in reality whatsoever. It is very easy for you to do that when you are still collecting a paycheck. These people are not. They're not collecting paychecks. They're worried about how they're going to feed their families, how they're going to pay their rent, how they're going to pay their bills. That is what they're worried about. This is not and you took zero time out to really understand them, or even to attempt a conversation. It is so obvious because you are afraid of what it's going to do and the cognitive dissonance that it is going to cause you. This article already is like a giant exercise in projection. Absurd. We are now, here we go, folks. We are now entering my specialty: public health approaches to violence prevention and how to stop epidemics of violence before they happen. Individual violence is hardly predictable, since even the most violent individuals are not violent most of the time, but societal violence is entirely predictable. Prevention is still hard to talk about, since we must act before we see things unfold, but it is highly effective. It is true of pandemics, and it is true of mental health. We can enlighten ourselves through science and prevent catastrophes before they occur. That entire paragraph says nothing that is even worthy of note. I don't even know why it's in here. Lee spoke with Salon about the president's response to coronavirus and his embrace of protesters calling for an end to social distancing restrictions. Her views represent only those of the World Mental Health Coalition, of which she is president. So her views only represent the views of the World Mental Health Coalition. All right, well, that means it must be true, huh? Let's see. Trump has tried to play it both ways, arguing that his lockdown guidelines saved millions of lives while calling for an end to the lockdowns. How does this cognitive dissonance affect the public during a confusing and scary crisis? Okay, so they're saying the cognitive dissonance is arguing his lockdown guidelines save millions of lives while calling for an end to the lockdowns. Okay, that's not cognitive dissonance. That's not cognitive dissonance. That's looking at the situation in a nuanced way to say, listen, we need to lock down to save lives. And now that we have done that for a little while, we need to take steps to open the economy. Those are not two contradictory points. So the entire basis of this question is wrong. Having no core but wishing to avoid accountability, he often tries to cover all grounds, but the psychological effect on the public will eventually be the most harmful. Not the devastating pandemic, the economic hardship, or even the incompetence itself, but now but now he hypnotized and misled the public to cover up his ineptitude. She really thinks that you've been hypnotized. A Yale psychiatrist, the president of the World Mental Health Coalition, is making a serious argument that if you want the lockdown to end, you have been hypnotized. I can't even with these people. To lose our collective minds because an untreated, disturbed person is an To lose our collective minds because an untreated, disturbed person is an influential person has infected a third of the population with his distorted worldviews, all to buttress his fragile sense of self, will be a great trauma for the nation to emerge from. His supporters will be the most severely traumatized if they wake up at all. Brandy, girl, you need to get out of your echo chamber. You are the one who needs to wake up. You are the one. Oh my God. Like, of all people, this is, again, projection. This is an exercise in projection. You are the one who needs to wake up. You are the one who has believed the BS, believed the lies, probably tunes into CNN every day to get your little outrage fix. You are the one that needs to wake up. For real, man. And that's not to say, by the way, that's not to say that I think all Trump supporters are perfect. God knows there are a lot of Trump supporters that are not perfect either. But I trust right now, I trust the perspective of the protesters a heck of a lot more than I trust Yale psychiatrist. Harvard psychiatrist too, for that matter, but that's neither here nor there. How will we cope with the fact that a mentally compromised president caused a devastating pandemic? He caused the pandemic? Really? Because I thought that China caused the pandemic. By eliminating a global response system only 2 years earlier, removed CDC experts in China just months earlier, caused an overwhelming majority of deaths by refusing to respond sooner, and worsened suffering and deaths by continuing to push wrong information. Okay, folks, literally none of this is true. Brandy, go look at a calendar. This is not true. How do we recover from the oppression that states and mental health workers had to they're oppressed now. The states and the mental health workers are oppressed by Trump's three-phase plan giving them autonomy about when they open back up based on their guidelines. The states are oppressed. Had to suffer because the leader who was supposed to protect them ostensibly withheld life-saving supplies, watched with glee as those who did not praise him sufficiently suffered the most. Andrew Cuomo got everything he needed. Gavin Newsom got everything he needed. Andrew Cuomo and Gavin Newsom have come out saying they got everything they needed and praising Trump for what he's done. That's in real life. That's fact. This is in the land of make-believe right here. And created conditions where they had to compete with one another for equipment when we were all supposed to be in this together. Listen, New York asked for 40,000 ventilators or something crazy like that, and they ended up getting significantly less than that, and it was fine. Correct me if on the numbers. It was like they only needed 4,000 ventilators, but they asked for 40,000 or something like that. But the 4,000 ended up being fine. I mean, they're not in competition. We have all the things that we need. This is without counting the erroneous mental health effects from enduring the extreme shelter-in-place measures that have become necessary because of his mismanagement when we are social animals. Oh, really, Brandy? Because isn't this what the protesters are protesting? And you called them child soldiers that have been hypnotized by Trump's magic tree. I don't even know, magic tree is probably not even a word, but whatever, the psychiatry on the TV, they've been hypnotized. Are you kidding me? But it's the extreme shelter in place measures now that we're pushing back against. You have cognitive dissonance in your own GD article. It's not actually cognitive, it's just contradiction. It's not actually cognitive dissonance, but Let's use their terminology. And this is only on the medical side. How will we cope with this? Like, I don't know why I'm continually surprised at the fact that these people don't even bother to have conversations with people they're discussing before they say crazy nonsense like this in the media. I don't even know why I'm surprised anymore. How will we cope with his economic destruction, which seems to have set in motion something far worse than the Great Depression, because he depleted all economic infrastructure while trying to balloon his numbers for re-election even before the pandemic? How will we live with ourselves as we increasingly learn of a future that has been destroyed because he chose to bail out big business, including his own, that's a blatant lie, while throwing pennies to working people as if he asked them to worship him? Which is what his name on the checks is about. Most developed nations are supporting worker salaries to fuel economy and businesses to help ordinary people, whose entrusted money the government is using. Human-caused injury is ultimately the most traumatizing. People whom sociopaths have deceived. So now she's calling him a sociopath. People who sociopaths have deceived and exploited often come away with a feeling that their soul has been hollowed out. They have witnessed the extremes of which humanity is capable. This is even better than I thought it was going to be. I'm just going to be honest, it's even better. What is your reaction to the growing number of protests against public health measures around the country? Okay, so before we read her answer, let us remember that the protests are mostly from people who have lost their jobs, people who want to go back to work, people who are tired of being told they can't, and people who want to protect their fundamental liberties. Let's just establish that as a baseline of fact before we get into crazy person's answer. You may have noticed that the more the president abuses his base, you're abused, guys, you're abused. The more he abuses his base, the more they idolize him and obey what he says. He frames risking lives in service of him so as to prop up his ruined economy and increase his re-election prospects as liberation. And they come out in defiance of their own protection, demanding choice. He is practicing his total authority. Okay, like within 2 words, she's contradicted herself, right? These people are protesting in favor of having choice, and Trump is simultaneously practicing total authority to which they are obeying unquestionably. Like, oh my God. He is practicing his total authority and putting his armed troops in the streets. We would be mistaken to believe he will leave or even let a losing election happen in the first place. All right, so now she's saying that Trump is going to, rally his army of hypnotized child soldiers to, steal the election? I mean, and that he won't leave even if he loses? That seems totally plausible. Abuse of the mind is the worst kind, for you make people do what you wish against their own interests, and even extreme physical abuse becomes possible. All right, guys, so watch out, because Trump is going to come out with a whip and physically abuse you all next. He is not only getting away with shooting someone on Fifth Avenue, but a whole massacre. Why do you think, this is a great question here. Why do you think otherwise intelligent people are sometimes drawn to rhetoric suggesting the threat of a highly infectious and deadly virus is overhyped or even a hoax? Trump never said the virus was a hoax. Trump said that the way the media and the Democrats were treating it, that is the hoax. He never said the virus was a hoax. So the question maybe I would like to have answered, Brandy, is why is an obviously intelligent woman seemingly incapable of understanding that a simple issue of nuance, right? A simple issue of nuance and context. Trump didn't say the virus was a hoax. He said the coverage was a hoax. Mental symptoms do not discriminate between levels of intelligence. What we are seeing is what mental health experts warned would happen if we left a severely impaired person in an influential position without treatment, and what others have described as a cult. Yeah. All the structures are in place for a personality cult, certainly including the Fox News propaganda system, the pressure to conform from ever-growing cult members. That probably includes me. Wait, the pressure to conform from ever-growing cult members. I bet that includes me. And the insulation from facts that the president himself encourages by calling the real news the enemy. But what I find most insidious is the contagion of symptoms. Prolonged exposure to the president alone causes you to catch... Prolonged exposure to the president alone causes you to catch his worldview. Even the healthiest, soundest people turn crazy as if afflicted with the same condition as the president. I guess she's definitely talking about me now, right? This is a known phenomenon I have encountered a great deal from working in underserved settings. It is interchangeably called shared psychosis. Guys, we're all undergoing shared psychosis right now. We're all a family. We're all in this together. Folly, I don't know how to pronounce that, or induced delusional disorder. The cure is removal. Then, quite dramatically, an entire afflicted family, street gang, or prison cell block that seemed almost possessed returns to normal. Politicians seem to keep waiting for the public to propel his removal, but in reality, removal will justify removal. Remove the president first, and the people will follow. Isn't that convenient that we shouldn't actually have to have evidence or parameters or a process or buy-in to remove an elected president? We should just remove him and then hope it's all going to pan itself out and prove to be the correct decision. Sure. What should the general public's response be when we see relatively small groups like these protesters spread misinformation that can have potentially deadly consequences? Like cigarette smoking, shooting rampages, and reckless driving, freedoms that endanger lives and curtail others' freedoms are not legitimate freedoms, but a public health concern. People should fight for their legal rights. Isn't that what the protesters are doing? I'm sorry, isn't that literally what the protesters are doing? People should fight for their legal rights. They should demand access to information as well as to expertise and correct intervention. When experts call out abnormal signals, it is not a diagnosis but important information. When Dr. Li Weiling of China detected a SARS-like virus, his observations were important and should be heeded, not silenced. It is not up to mental health experts to say how it is to be done, but it is our responsibility to say what must be done based on our best assessment, our prescription. And notice how she's positioning this as though all mental health experts see the world the same way. Our prescription, all mental health professionals' prescription, is removal. BS. Since issuing this prescription a month ago, I have repeatedly written about it, and I am waiting for authorities to respond. And as with the viral pandemic, time translates to lives. All right, this is literally the most insane thing I've ever read. This is real, folks. If you want to read it, I will link it in the description below. You can go read it and form your own conclusions, and we'll go from there. All right, so as the knitters on my video have noticed, I am wearing a shawl that I have not worn before. So this is just for the knitters, my little epilogue for the knitters, because I know that most of you don't really care about the shawls I'm wearing, so I save it till the end. But this is the messy twist shawl, the meshy twist shawl, not messy, meshy, mesh. From Westness. This was in his yarn along a couple years ago. It is one of my absolute favorite shawls to wear. It wears really, really well. Here's a picture of what it looks like, the full thing. I've got, you can see all the mesh. You can see this beautiful smocking detail. This is Ursa Cheetah yarn, which is really, really fantastic. This red is absolutely beautiful. So that's what I'm wearing. Meshy twist, West Knits, really good knit. Lots of purl through back loop though. If I never have to do another purl through back loop again, I will be very happy with that. But that was my only pet peeve with this particular shawl, was that. Otherwise, it's a beautiful shawl. I love it. One of my favorites. All right, guys, that's all I have for this time. See you in a little bit.